Welcome, my dear friends. It's fantastic to see you. I'm Stephen Clements, a writer, a gamer, and an appreciator of big brain activities in general. On this channel, I perform dramatic story readings, I provide role-playing game and movie reviews, and I get to talk to interesting people. And in this episode, we start my review of the AD&D 2nd Edition Challenge Series 2 Quartet of Modules. The 2nd Edition Challenge Series modules were designed with only one player of a specific class and their DM in mind. So we got a Cleric's Challenge, a Fighter's Challenge, a Thief's Challenge, and a Wizard's Challenge. If your player character happened to be a variant of those base classes, they still worked. And in my personal experience, these modules can be used for small parties and not just a solo player. I find them to be interesting modules, and I didn't see anybody else doing a video review of them. So here I am to do my part for spreading the word about this often overlooked series of modules and contributing to the recorded history to the role-playing hobby. I've already reviewed the 4 Challenge Series 1 modules, so check those out if you haven't already. Those are pretty popular. People liked them. And if you haven't checked out the like and subscribe button, go ahead and do that now. And the first module we're going to look at in the Challenge Series 2 is Cleric's Challenge 2. And before we get into who made it, what I think about it, and where you can find it, let's see how it sells itself. From the back cover, Cleric's Challenge 2 by Paul F. Collada. Something evil is stalking the parish of Barlocks. 10 years ago, the village's temple burned to the ground and the parish priest disappeared. The temple has since been rebuilt, but life has not returned to normal. A current of fear and discontent now ripples beneath the surface of this once sleepy winemaking community. Old rivalries have turned bitter and unwittingly unleashed a force of ancient corruption. Cleric's Challenge 2 is a special one-on-one advanced Dungeons & Dragons adventure designed for a Dungeon Master and one-player character Cleric of 4th to 6th level. It is the 8th in a series of independent adventures focusing on an individual character of a specific class. And I know it says this is the 8th one in the series, but it's the 5th one I'm reviewing. Well, C comes before F, comes before T, comes before W. So that's why clerics go first, and they're God's favorite. And this book has 32 pages of adventure text, 2 full-page color maps, and 1 page with 3 player handouts. Unfortunately, the handouts are just text, so nothing too exciting presentation-wise. So who made this thing? Looking at the credits page, the designer and so the writer is listed as Paul F. Collada. Collada is a National Guard veteran, a lawyer, and wrote a bunch of dungeon adventures and dragon articles. And when I say a bunch of dungeon adventures, I mean 18 by my count. That's a lot. I've read several of them and even ran one with a modified introduction, The Inheritance. The adventure as written has a PC inheriting a castle from a now dead relative. When I ran it, I made it a battle in a military campaign I had going between goblinoid forces who had taken the keep from the human duchy, and the party had been trained to be in the Duke's Special Forces unit and had to take it back. It was a knockdown, drag-out fight involving several PCs getting shield bashed off the walls by elite hobgoblin fighters, but through grit and determination, the players carried the day. Collada's work also appeared in the 2nd edition compilation adventure book Road to Danger, the NPC collection book Heroes Lore Book, and Ravenloft's Children of the Night Vampires. His RPG work appears to end at 2E, but what I read of it was good. He's still storytelling and writing, though. He participates in storyteller competitions around Rome, Georgia, tells people Biden was a good idea, and is currently working on a 5-part sci-fi epic, so look him up on Facebook if you're interested. Link in the description below. Strangely, he has an IMDb credit as an actor in the 2017 short movie Gangsters and Zombies. I haven't seen it. The poster isn't hope-inspiring, but here's the description. When a small group of survivors stagger into the crossfires of a territorial war between a ruthless clan of villains and a criminal family of gangsters, the zombie apocalypse just got bloodier. I think it's neat to find out that RPG creators are into things like that. It shows that creativity is portable. And it's good for people to mix it up and try expressing themselves in different ways than they're used to. You never know when you might hit some creative spark. But I got my doubts that this one is a flash of brilliance. For editor, we have Susan Kugath. And reading the module, I didn't find any problems with the text itself. So she did a good job spell checking and making sure grammar worked. But I got plenty of problems with just how the whole thing's laid out, part of which can be laid at the editor's feet, and we'll get to that later. RPG Geek says this and Player's Secrets of Bensata for Birthright are her only 2 credits, and I couldn't find anything else about her. I did find a few women that roughly match the name, might match the age. One is definitely hotter than the other, but I couldn't find corroborating evidence that either one was this lady. She took advantage of living in the age before social media where everything you do, say, and think is posted live for Big Brother to see 24/7. So she gets to keep her secrets. Now the creative director is listed as Steve Winter. I've enjoyed his work, played in his convention games, and he has been mentioned in many of my previous reviews and interviews because he's kind of a big deal. If this is your first time hearing of Steve, he edited Star Frontiers, the Marvel Superheroes game line, the 2nd edition Spelljammer line, the spaceship game that actually gave you rules on how to engage in spaceship combat, unlike the 5e one. Wrote Boot Hill 3rd edition, and so many D&D related credits from 1st edition to 5th edition that it would take an entire episode just to list them all. Now, what influence Steve Winter had over the final manuscript, I don't know, but I can't help but feel his fingerprints all over this thing. Steve is an erudite and witty guy. He has extensive knowledge of all kinds of snobbish subcultures that play into the module. So the sly humor and sordid gothic feel in many of the relationships articulated in the module made me think that he either helped shape it into that, or he just happened to luck out and got a writer who was going to give exactly the kind of flavor that I know he's into on a silver platter. The cover art by Doug Chafee is great, and I love it, especially when I first saw it in a 2nd edition core book. It's a recycled cover and isn't tied directly to the module, so this is a little bit bait and switch. But it's not too far off because undead are involved. Because it's a Cleric's module, of course undead are involved. This is the first time I've had a reason to talk about Doug on this channel, and he was a pretty impressive guy. He escaped the frozen communist hellhole of New York to serve in the U.S. Army and National Guard, studied art and history in college, and then worked his way up to become head of IBM's art department. That's not a small deal. When he retired from IBM, he started his own art company and made banger after banger of fantasy and sci-fi art. And oh my God, the Battletech. Here's a list of the Battletech covers he illustrated. That's a big number. I'm not sure if I can count that high. Apparently they love this dude. Also Rollmaster, GURPS, Shadowrun, Dune, and more. People liked his work, even NASA, and this is exactly why I dig into the people behind the products, because there's gold to be found in their bios. Interior art is by Dennis Kramer. Fantastic art. In my opinion, it belongs in the vampire game, unlike the clip art they decided to go with for the new edition. Now, Dennis has a ton of 2nd edition and 3rd edition credits. And from what I saw, it's really good and haunting stuff. So I looked into Dennis Kramer, found this group of images in a Google search. This is pretty good stuff. Dennis clearly liked tits, as do I. Now, RPG Geek says he lives in Akron, Ohio, so F's in the chat, and he's contributed to Wizards of the Coast and TSR products, and the list of credits is impressive. I mean, look at some of his interior art from Reverse Dungeon for 2nd edition AD&D. This is quality stuff. Now, hold on. Why, when I search for Dennis Kramer artist, did Google pull up Justine Mara Anderson? Well, let's just click on this wiki link here and, This is a first for looks into people's bios off the credit pages for the material I review. This rabbit hole gets spicy, but we're here. Let's do this. To make a long story short, apparently Dennis was living in Ohio with his wife, got testicular cancer, had a midlife crisis, and ran off to Florida to become a woman, stop wearing shoes, become Hindu, and get railed by a guy 15 years older than him. No, I'm not making this up or exaggerating. It's in this news article, link in the description below. You can read it for yourself. And I found Justine's social media profile, and this photo makes me think he'd insist I put lotion on my skin. And now that I've seen that photo, Some of these spicy lady pieces strike me as fantasized self-inserts. You ever get a feeling that you walked into a room, saw something that you weren't prepared for, and you wish you could just back out, close the door, and like it never happened, right? Well, that kind of happened to me just now. But as wild a ride as that was, he's still making good art, and it speaks for itself. It's quality work. I'm glad I found this excuse to see more good artwork. Okay, now that YouTube can ban me for not screaming full-throated endorsement of those kind of life choices, on to the border art. Stephen Danielle and Sue Billings give us border art that is very Ravenloft. I liked it, but it was spotty in application. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. I'm not sure why. Sue Billings' only other RPG credit was Wind Riders of the Jagged Cliffs for AD&D 2.5's Dark Sun, and I couldn't find any more about her. Stephen Daniela has a ton of later TSR credits, and according to his LinkedIn profile, he was a TSR art director for a while. He's remained active in creative work as an artist and developer for game companies like Acclaim, Interplay, Disney, Microsoft, and Visual Concepts, where he's at now. I put his LinkedIn URL in the description below, so go check it out. It's pretty cool. And for cartography, we get work by Dennis Kramer and Sue Billings. It's also excellent, as the maps we get are appealing and helpful. They may not be the most dramatic maps because the adventure is set in a pleasant wine town, not Mordor or the 9th level of Baator, but the maps are good. They also emphasize how small the play area is. Following the scale on the village map, the entire thing is only about 1,000 feet, west to east. This is the coziest adventure setting I've seen. Even though this is set in a rural area, this kind of makes it an urban adventure with wilderness features worked in. It's different. I like it. And now that we survived the credits section, let's get into the adventure itself. And since this is a little known module, I'll throw up a spoiler warning because that's something I see other reviewers doing on decades-old modules, so I guess it's a requirement. I'm going to get into the details of Cleric's Challenge 2, the villain, the plot, how it's set up, and how it ends. So if you're squeamish about hearing those details before you play a module, why did you click on a review video for it? Spoiler up front, I think it's a neat little story and that you should run it. It's not a long adventure, but it's an intricate adventure. And realistically, in size and scope, it's somewhere between a sidetrack and a full-blown quest. So it's probably going to take you more than one session, but less than 20 for sure. If you go more than 4, I would be shocked. If you go 4, I would be shocked. I mean, you've only got 500 feet one way or another from the center of the town to go. There's only so much time this could take. The introduction mentions the solo PC needs access to the healing and combat spell spheres of magic and the ability to turn undead. You may wonder why that needs specifying, but in 2nd edition, your cleric might not have had access to those things. You see, gods and the clerics that serve them could be wildly different back in the day. It's almost like different religions value different things, and different gods value different things over others. So a god of murder in 2nd edition might not give you access to healing magic because he's a god of murder. He wants things to die. Just like a god of darkness might ban you from getting light spells. A god of light might ban you from getting darkness spells. A druid or a priest dedicated to some nature deity might not have any ability to turn undead because that's necromancy. And undead are unnatural things. So that's why it specifies your cleric's going to need access to these things or some sort of workaround. And the module is written with a cleric of good or neutral alignment in mind because games about heroes require player characters that might give a flip about innocent people and try to help them. And as we touched on, undead are back and are central to the module, just like in Cleric's Challenge 1. So for overall adventure design assessment, this is not a dungeon crawl, it's not a wilderness adventure, and it's not a railroad. It's a social encounter-driven sandbox adventure with sparingly few combats to make the stakes interesting. It's an open investigation of a murder mystery where things are scheduled to happen each day if the PC doesn't trigger them or heads them off with the choices they make. So player initiative and time both push the story forward. This might be over in one day of play, or it might never end, and we're going to see why. But remember, that sandbox isn't very big. It's this one village. And that one village, as the back cover mentioned, is Barlocks, which is generic, can be set in any game world of the DM's choosing, in an environment suitable for growing grapes. Now, wherever the DM places the village, the module specifies it should be at least 5 days ride away from any local lord that could be called upon to render aid, because the goal is for the PC to save the town, not to call in the Baron's cavalry. Now that seems kind of crazy to me. 5 days ride? How big is this barony? Baronies don't tend to be very large. In 5 days ride, you gotta figure a horse can probably go about 20 miles a day easy. So we're talking 100 miles in a barony, the smallest unit of feudal society. So that seems a little extraneous to me, but they're going to keep bringing up that detail throughout the module. I don't know that it's necessary. And the problem that the PC is confronting is an unusual mummy has been created by an evil deity and is terrorizing the town. So in order to complete the adventure, the PC needs to defeat the mummy and its undead minions. And while the minions can just get wrecked in the normal fashion, to get rid of the mummy, since it was directly created by an evil deity, requires a special MacGuffin written for the module, and it's pretty neat. But to raise the stakes a little bit, not only is the PC out to save the lives of innocent villagers and to solve the mystery, but the PC's church has been losing influence in the town, which used to be a pretty fervent community for that church. And so this is the PC's chance to redeem it in the villager sight and to cause a revival. Now, Chapter 1, Introduction to Barlocks, describes the town and the history of the evil plaguing the region. It's pretty intricate. And it also describes the key areas of the town, so the locations you might go, and the NPCs and their motivations. Then Chapter 2 moves on to talking about planned and timed encounters. Chapter 3 provides the specifics on the rumble with the mummy. And Chapter 4 is the wrap-up of the adventure, as well as the stats for the special mummy. So Barlocks is a small town in a sunny, warm region, best known for its fine vineyards. There's only about 170 people residing in the whole place, and they almost all work with grapes. And there's 4 major wineries around the town, and that's going to be important later on. Most of the people are normies. They're honest, satisfied with their lives, and there's no monsters around here. The last ones were exterminated about 50 years ago, and there's very few bandits or outlaws that come around. The most trouble they usually have is spotting a bear or a wolf nearby. So a murderous special mummy is not something they're prepared to deal with. Those 4 wineries are owned by the families the Smedlings, the Musliches, the Tetons, and the Depardieux. And each year, the 4 wineries compete to have their vintage recognized as the best in the land by Baron Appleby, the guy who's locked behind a 5-day ride away. And this competition is important because whichever one the Baron likes the most, he's going to place his orders for the year through them. So money's involved. As we go along, you're going to see there's some psychology of like industrial espionage and competition written into the module. So there's going to be a lot of nuances and character to the people and the conflicts that we're going to cover. Now, the top 2 have been the Smedling and the Musliches. They've been fighting each other for number 1 for years. And by fighting, I mean that seriously. When the Musliches lost a competition for the first time a decade ago to the Smedlings, the Musliches didn't take that well, and they hired an assassin to go take out the person they blamed for them losing, the old priest in town, Father Bernadette, and for good measure, his wife Hilda. Why assassinate the priest and not the head of the other family? Because the priest had been seen blessing the vineyards of their rivals, and so when their rivals magically won the next time, well, it had to be the fault of that deity. Yeah, these are some petty paranoid people. So the assassin went and took out the priest and his wife in pretty awful ways, and an investigation by the Baron himself could not find the priest's body. They did find the charred remains of Hilda inside the church that had been burned to the ground, but they couldn't find old Father Bernadette. Well, that's because old Father Bernadette got waylaid by the Musliches' old hand, Mueller Muggins, who they paid 500 gold pieces to discreetly do away with the priest. So this Mueller Muggins is a despicable character who everybody in town disliked. Yeah, his long, greasy black hair, a pug nose, and crooked teeth seemed to match his nasty personality. He was sneaky, ill-tempered, and had no love for the temple. So Mueller persuaded the town drunk, Old Man Riggins, to become his accomplice. One night, his father Bernadette was returning home from a chess game with his best friend, Old Man Teton. The old drunk accosted him for a few silvers for a cup of wine. When the priest began to lecture Old Man Riggins about his heavy drinking, Mueller clubbed him from behind and knocked him out. And stuck Father Bernadette's unconscious body inside of a big old vat of brandy and locked him in. Right when he was closing the lid to the brandy, Father Bernadette woke up to see himself being sealed in, and he banged and he cried and he prayed to be rescued, and he drowned in that brandy. And it wasn't set to be opened for another 15 years because it needed to age. And there his body lay, trapped in 40% by-volume alcohol amber. So after Father Bernadette was drowned in the sealed cask, Mueller decided he was going to finish things and went to the temple, broke in, doused the church in oil, and put it to the torch. As it burned to the ground, Mueller believed he had committed the perfect crime. If Bernadette's body was found, everyone would suspect the Smedlings were responsible for the fire and murders. No one could point the finger at either him or his employer, Jason Mucilage. And here we get one of the problems that I came across in the editing. Already on page 3, we see that Baron Appleby investigated the murder, and he didn't find anything other than Hilda's corpse. Well, then on page 4, we have a repeat of that. Baron Appleby was asked to investigate. He found nothing and proclaimed the fire to be accidental. Actually, even worse, this leaves out the detail that he found Hilda's burned corpse inside the temple. So we're getting repeated information, and it's incomplete. So in the aftermath, Mueller Muggins decided that being an assassin was fun, became a professional killer for hire, got a dumb young wife, and wondered what happened with the body. Because he didn't know that the cask was going to be closed for 15 years. He figured that it would be open within a year or two, and they'd find the dead priest on the property of the people he helped win the competition, and so all their names would be blackened. So if this sounds like a lot of story, you gotta wonder, well, where does the player character come into that? Well, the High Matriarch of the player character's church has decided to send one of its proven clerics, in this case the player character, to Barlocks to see what they can do to jazz up church attendance. The High Matriarch doesn't know about all these problems, and she's just seeing a parish that has fallen on down times and wants to reinvigorate worship of your God in this area. So the PC is ostensibly sent there to see what they can do to win some souls over. So just before the game starts, the newest wine contest was held, and the murdering Mucilages broke Smedling's win streak to come out on top again. The head Smedling was mad, bitter, and depressed, so he did what anybody else would do. Pray to anybody that would listen to destroy his rivals. That's right, an evil god of the DM's choice listened and granted his wish. Because as the head Smedling was praying this hateful thought, he was also banging his fist against the side of the brandy barrel. And the evil god's answer to this prayer was to make the brandy-pickled body of the old priest animated as a fearsome undead monster of terrifying intelligence that would awaken and slowly destroy the Mucilages. As a mummy. A brandy mummy. A brandy mummy. All mummies are preserved corpses, right? With the canopic jars and the swaddling and all that, and sometimes the application of honey to keep away the bacteria. But brandy preserves things as well. This is creative. I like this. And now this avenging mummy, when it broke the seal and got out of the cask later that night, it went to the graveyard, found its dear old dead wife Hilda's remains, dug them up, and animated them to become a guardian for its lair, which was going to remain the brandy cask. And you know, that's couple goals right there. You know, like I would like my wife to do that for me. If I go before her in a horrible murder situation, I would do the same for her. We would totally be into that. Wraithly revenge beyond the grave against our enemies. That's what true love's made for. And over the next 2 nights, the mummy quietly killed 2 Mucilage workers and turned them into zombies, because it can do that. On the 4th night, the mummy burst into Mueller Muggins' home And Mueller had developed good fighting skills as a hired killer, but he was no match for the enraged undead. He grabbed him by the throat, drowned him in his own bathtub, and dragged his body away. Mueller's wife, Missy, witnessed the violent attack and was paralyzed with fright. The following afternoon, she was found catatonic in a corner, curled in a fetal position. The constable investigated. He went to the Muselich winery that evening, and as he spoke with Jason Muselich, the head of the Muselich family, the door to the living room burst open and in strode the Brandy mummy, who none of them recognized as Father Bernadette, because, he's kind of pickled and preserved. And the creature slammed the constable against the wall, knocking him senseless, and then it dragged Jason Muselich, screaming and kicking, to the barn, where it turned him upside down in a rain barrel until the bubble stopped coming. And then the monster disappeared into the shadows of the vineyards, carrying the corpse over its shoulders. He means business. He returned to the vat of brandy at the Smedling winery, took the corpse of his enemy in there, and closed the lid to preserve him and make him undead. Because that's what they do every night. The mummy and his undead minions, they make a brandy undead soup. It's pretty gross. And so every night now, until the player character fixes this, the mummy's going to come out, transforms its latest kill into a zombie, and sends all of its undead minions to wreak havoc in another part of town as a diversion so it can go after another target. And it kills another Muselich, an affiliate of the family's winery, or anyone else who gets in the way. The restless spirit murders to ensure that Smedling wine will be the choice vintage of the land. And that's the background and the way the module plays out. Night by night, the mummy does something bad, and somebody else gets wrecked. And so all that backstory, while it's interesting to read, are you going to get to do anything with it at the table? Or is it just locked where only the DM is ever going to know about it, and player characters will have no idea all that's there? Because that's a problem in many modules, where it's basically the writer's frustrated attempt to get a short story published, and the players never see it. Here, no. Everything we just went over, the player can learn in play by investigating and talking to the different NPCs. So none of that reading was wasted, but it was a good prep time to understand what's going to come. And from there, we get descriptions of the different locations of importance to the module, the NPCs found there, their personalities and motivations, and the clues the players will need to find out what's really going on. For example, we start with the Muselich winery. We get a map of their winery complex, we get what's in each of their outbuildings, and we get basic stats for the NPCs. And initially, none of the Museliches are going to want to talk to the Cleric because they don't like priests of his faith and believe that the monster will be back to harm them. And they stay close to home to defend themselves. Now, if the player character does something to win over their trust, they'll become cooperative. They'll begin providing information. And unsurprisingly, the entire household is in despair at the loss of their family leader, Jason, who got gagged by some amber-dripping creature, and the family wonders if Jason's murder at the hand of that hideous monster is connected to their recent victory in the wine contest. Now, only one NPC, Maribel, saw Jason's murder, and she breaks down in tears when she thinks about it. She didn't recognize the monster and describes it as a, quote, a brown reeking man thing that dragged off poor Jason. When the constable tried to stop him, the thing struck him with one arm and knocked him senseless, end quote. Now, the Museliches naturally suspect the Smedlings were involved in the attack because there's been bad blood between the two houses ever since the Smedlings allegedly cheated 10 years ago. Now, if the Cleric asks how the Smedlings cheated, the Museliches explain that Father Bernadette blessed the Smedling vineyards that year, and Jason felt that it was unfair. Now, nothing would have stopped him from asking the priest to do the same thing for him, but that's his problem. Actually, I guess it's the player character's problem. And the priest's supposed fiery death unnerved all but Jason, the guy who hired Mueller Muggins to do all that, who calmly remarked, well, however it happened, I'm sure he got what he deserved, the meddling priest. Hey, that's suspicious right there. Now, at each location, you can also get forensic details, like if the player character examines the room where Jason was taken, they're going to find a broken front door, which looks as if a battering ram knocked it in. Clearly, something of incredible strength did this. And the barrel Jason was drowned in. They're also going to find tracks that lead to the east, but soon disappear in the rocky soil. They'll also be able to find a study with ledgers recording business transactions for the winery. And if the PC reads the book of a decade ago, he'll see a payment by Jason to Mueller Muggins of 500 gold pieces labeled severance pay. Jason was the only one to know about the assassination, but this is a clue that the player character can follow up on. Now, speaking of Mueller Muggins, that clue from the ledger or other clues may point the player character to go check out Mueller Muggins' home, which is a fine 2-story brick home with its doorway boarded up. A sign reads, "Stay out by order of Constable Schuster." Lying on the porch is a pile of splintered wood. A shattered board has a door handle attached to it. Again, we get forensic details that the pieces of wood are the remains of the door that has been shattered to pieces. And the frame is also damaged, as if something large and powerful battered its way inside. And in the living room, we see that heavy items of furniture are scattered everywhere. You can find the magic dagger that Mueller used to defend himself, which, not well enough. And close examination of it reveals a faint, dried amber stain, which is from the mummy's brandy-logged body. When the PC searches the rest of the home, it appears extremely comfortable for someone who retired from the fields 10 years ago. Mueller, he's got top-shelf everything. If he could have Gucci and Balenciaga, no doubt Balenciaga, brand items, he would. Now, in his house is one of the few traps that we have in the entire module. In the bedroom closet on the second floor, where the PC can find a wallboard that moves to reveal some of Mueller's ill-gotten gains and his stash, his bug-out bag. But moving it also causes a 15-pound lead bar to plummet from a 6-inch diameter hole in the ceiling onto the head of whoever stands below it. Ouch! Now, the hole is obvious if someone happens to look up. They'll be able to see it, though they might not know what it is. And the trap can be avoided by standing out of the way as the board is pulled back, or by catching the weight as it falls. If you get hit in the head with it, you take 2d4 points of damage, and you have a 10% chance of being knocked out for 1 to 4 turns. Now, if you wear a metal helmet, that halves the damage and nullifies the possibility of being knocked out. So I like that it's well thought through like that. Safety equipment can limit the opportunity for you to get completely brained by this thing. But I like the simplicity of it. Anybody that's just nailed their shin against a trailer hitch will know a simple metal bar can inflict a lot of pain. Now, also back with Mueller's stash, you can find a small diary that he started the day he became a killer for hire. And in it, he gloats over the past 10 years of murders he committed, who hired him, and all the gory details. So this would be fantastic evidence against any number of NPCs that the DM might want the player to pursue in the future. And in fact, Mueller kept this diary in case he ever needed to turn on one of his employers. But only the first entry has any bearing on this adventure, and that gives us player handout number 1, which it goes on for a bit, so I'm not going to read it to you. But it's an interesting little read. So Mueller, I find to be such an interesting and nuanced NPC that this is totally a character worth recycling as a villain in another game. Or, if the timelines add up right, you could use Mueller Muggins as a villain. Moving on from there, we got the general store where the mayor, Rollins Goodfellow, works. And he's nervous when questioned about what's been happening in town. He wrings his hands and breaks out in a sweat. He's not guilty of anything, but he's not the steadiest hand in the west or the south or whatever cardinal direction this is. Rollins remembers the horrible night 10 years ago when Father Bernadette's church burned to the ground. Useful information that he might be able to help out with the investigation is that he remembers the horrible night 10 years ago when Father Bernadette's church was burned to the ground, and he recalls that the priest was a good friend of Jorg Teton, Old Man Teton that I referred to earlier, and the father and Jorg played chess every week, which that is a useful detail we'll cover later. Now, Rollins, he'll encourage the PC to seek out and destroy whatever curse has afflicted this town, but he has no desire to join in any monster hunts, as every night he bars his door and sleeps with his covers pulled over his head. That's a mayor. Now, of course, if a cleric's going to a town where he's trying to drum up business, he might go to the church and parsonage, which is a single-story wooden church with an adjoining small house next to the river. And right next to it are the charred ruins of the previous church and a graveyard. Now, that parsonage, that quaint one-bedroom house there, that's where Father Dominic and his wife Joanna reside. Now, Dominic is a very low-level cleric and is completely out of his depth with all what could be going on here. So he can't solve the problems that the PC is here for. Now, he and his wife, Joanne, are currently nursing back to health Missy Muggins, Mueller's young wife, who remains dumbstruck because she witnessed the murder. Now, those ruins I talked about, yeah, it's a scorched area with a few old blackened timbers still on the ground. These are the ruins of the first temple. Now, Joanna is working on planting a vegetable and flower garden here, and that'll be important because if the PC doesn't find it, eventually she'll find a buried staircase leading into the basement of the old church, which has the MacGuffin that can defeat the mummy once and for all. Now, Joanna will come across it by accident while digging, whereas a player character will have to do a search. Now, if they do a search, they'll also notice that a particular grave has been dug up, which is the grave where Father Bernadette's burned-to-death wife was laid to rest and that he later exhumed. Also in town, we have the Drunkard's Home. And this one, this not a lot of flavor text, but it paints a picture. Most of the homes in the village have seemed tidy and bright, but this one has grimy windows, a trash-strewn yard, and reeks of old wine. A cat crouches on the shadowed windowsill. I feel like I've seen this place. Like, the only thing this needs to be is up on blocks, and I know I've been to this trailer park. Now, this dilapidated place belongs to the town drunk, Old Man Riggins. He's 80 years old, and he's lived here since he lost his right leg in a war 60 years ago. A few years after moving here, his wife left him, and he's drunk his life away on the modest pension provided by the king, and he can always be found at home in the morning and early afternoon, sleeping off the previous day's debauchery. At mid-afternoon, he staggers to the tavern and stays there until closing at midnight. Now, the place stinks of wine and other unsavory smells, the result of his chronic alcoholism, and the cat, Sasha, is the old man's only friend. Now, if you liquor up Riggins, he can be quite talkative, and he can tell you tall tales and gossip about anything and everyone in town. He knows all about the Smedling Mucilage rivalry, and he's aware of those families' affairs. Now, if you ask him about the burning of the church 10 years ago, he gets real snippy, and he says, all I know is it just burned down one night and the priest and his missus died. Don't ask me any more about it because I sure don't know. And it's been eating at him all these years. The role that he played is Patsy in getting Father Bernadette murdered, and he refuses to talk about it. And now that Mueller Muggins and the Mucilage workers and eventually Jason Mucilage have gone missing or have been murdered, it's getting to him. Oh look, a character that's on crutches that actually has to slow down because turns out not having working legs is a problem in a world with healing magic. Now that tavern that he spends all his time at, the Grape Shot Tavern, there we meet the owner and bartender Reggie Salthorse, a 55-year-old retired mariner. He quit sailing about 9 years ago and decided to set up a tavern far from the ocean. Guess he's not a fan of the waves anymore. Now he's a likable fellow and he'll speak with the PC readily, and he knows about the rivalries, mostly because Old Man Riggins won't quit telling him about it. Now a few years ago, a band of gypsies came through town, and on a whim, he got one of them to read his palm. An old fortune teller told him, "A good business you'll have, Reggie Salthorse. But ware the day that the dead swim from their graves, for soon you may lose your best customer." Now, when Reggie told that to Old Man Riggins, who usually likes a good joke, the old man didn't think it was very funny at all. See, this is a strength of the module. It gives so many personal connections for the NPCs that it enriches the experience. These are people that have relationships with each other in a world that exists outside of the player character, so it seems more real when the player character gets into it. Reggie is also the only NPC who might help the player fight the mummy once the player figures out what's going on. But Reggie is also not an idiot and won't throw his life away on a stupid idea, so he's going to grill the PC first. What's your plan? And he'll think about if it's a good plan or not. If it is, he'll go and he'll fight because he's a brave man, but he's not stupid. And Reggie has a deep abiding hatred for the undead because he lost one of his best shipmates to a pack of Lacedons years ago. So he's got skin in the game. Now the sheriff, Tom Schuster, when the player characters first meet him, he's going to be incapacitated because Father Dominic can't heal what's wrong with him. And when he got his ass beat by the mummy, he was infected with the mummy's unique curse. Now, if the player character cures him, Schuster will be very grateful and become a devout follower of the PC's religion and will actively help in his investigation. So this is neat. He's an unlockable NPC helper. He doesn't just automatically give the help, but if the PC earns it, here you go. And moving on to one of the other wineries in town, the Depardieu winery, there's this scary dog breeding family that wants you off their land as soon as possible. And they don't figure heavily into the adventure, but again, active players can unlock them as helpers when their dogs get threatened by the mummy. Now, at the Teton Winery, a clue the PC can learn earlier could lead him here and talk to old man Jorg Teton, who remembers Father Bernadette fondly and misses him, and Jorg has always suspected the Musliches were involved. He mourns the passing of the priest, as he and Bernadette were best friends and often played chess in the evening. And since the priest was last seen in his home on the night of the fire, Jorg himself was under suspicion. Now, a neat thing happening at Jorg's winery is that there's this section called the Mystery Chess Game. In the living room is a chessboard set as if in mid-game. If asked about it, Jorg says that he and his oldest son, Remengar, are playing a game, each making one move per day. If mentioned during dinner, or if the PC questions Remengar about it, the son denies having a game with his father. He states that although they have done this in the past, the current game is one that Jorg is playing against himself. Jorg denies playing a solitary game. He explains that it started when he found the chessboard set up and the first move made several mornings ago. He admits, however, that he has not seen his son playing. And while that's not a detail I imagine most player characters would find and pick up on, that's really cool, because Father Bernadette is in fact coming in and playing a chess game with his old friend. That's really sweet and deep in character. And close inspection of the game reveals a few very small brownish stains on the board and the white pieces, betraying Father Bernadette's brandy-soaked body. Father Bernadette realizes he can't reveal himself to his old friend, so he sneaks in while everyone's asleep. And if a PC is able to figure all this out, he might set up an ambush for the undead as it approaches the Teton household. And finally, we have the Smedling Winery. Now, if the PCs approach here, the Smedlings cordially greet the PC and earnestly hope that he can get to the bottom of this mysterious, chilling series of events. And because of their rivalry with the Musliches, the Smedlings hope that a neutral party, the PC, will clear up any suspicions of them. Now, everyone here denies any involvement with the evil events in town or the burning of the temple. They don't mourn Jason Muslich's passing, since he publicly accused them of cheating the first year that the Smedlings won the contest. And in the farmhouse living room is a portrait of a young Father Bernadette, drawn 10 years before his disappearance. If the PC has encountered the mummy, or if he sees the picture and then the creature, he'll notice the resemblance if he makes a successful intelligence check at -3 penalty due to severe discoloration of indifference and age of the undead. I personally would remove that skill check because, one, it's fairly unlikely that the PC will get this clue, and two, when they get the clue and confront the mummy, just let them have it for sake of dramatic impact. I think it would be cool, because hiding a cool story behind a skill check can be failed, and that's a detail that the PC may never know. And we finished Chapter 1 with a random rumors table to add spice or nudge shy players in certain directions. Some are true, some are false, and some are a mix of both. A sampling of them include: a tannery that has come to the village slays all who cross its path. It's false. Mueller Muggins left town every 3 months or so and was secretive about what he did on his excursions. After his last trip, he brought back a powerfully enchanted relic that is the cause of people disappearing. He was secretive about his career, but his magic items have nothing to do with the problems at hand. The Smedlings have discovered the love affair between young Jason Muslich II and Patricia Smedling. To defend their daughter's honor, the Smedlings have created a monster to kill all the Musliches. The two young people are having an affair, but the rest is false. And if anyone knows what happened 10 years ago, it's Old Man Riggins. He knows everything. Strange that he won't talk about it. Entirely true. Oh, and one villager does guess what's going on. The darkness that has befallen the town began about 10 years after the church burned down. Father Bernadette must have arisen from the grave to take vengeance on whoever killed him. And with all the building blocks of the adventure in place, Chapter 2 puts them in motion with a day-by-day timeline of how the adventure might play out. It also adds time-keyed events that stir the pot and add clues the PC may not have found yet to advance that plot. And since this is a sandbox, the cleric might solve the mystery and deal with the mummy earlier than the timeline covers, and if they do, they may miss out on some grisly murders and revenge from beyond the grave. Now, if they don't, more NPCs will get whacked. And here's where I'm torn on this module. A more linear module would put all those people and places from Chapter 1 in this timeline and present the adventure with all the details in one spot for each location, telling the DM what they need to know when they need to know it. Instead, we get locations and key details of what happens in them chopped up between sometimes over 3 chapters. So we have the same problem of keeping track of all the details as in Ravenloft 2, House on Griffin Hill. And technically, this setup means the adventure doesn't actually get started until 17 pages into the module, which isn't good. I'm not satisfied with this carving up of key details, and some of it is padding, which we also see in these massive margins. It looks like they had to hit 32 pages and didn't have enough material, so they made it happen. With all that said, only the first 3 events happen no matter what the PC does. So let's see what twists the timeline throws at us. Day 1, Event 1, the PC receives his mission from the High Matriarch of his church. Days 2 to 5, they have to travel to Barlocks. Day 6, arrival in Barlocks, and the PC encounters zombies on the outskirts of town. In town, he encounters the village priest, who begs for help in curing the constable. Now, those are the only things that have to happen because the PC can't encounter the mummy before then. Now, Event 1, easy enough, you get the mission. And then on day 6, we get Event 2, called the Welcoming Committee. You are on the outskirts of the small hamlet of Barlocks. In the moonlight, you see vineyards with plump grapes ready for harvest. You have also seen a few paths off the road, with signs marking the way to farm estates. Ahead, you can just make out the twinkling lights of the small village. Suddenly, 3 dark figures stagger out of the shadowy vineyards and lurch toward you. They moan horribly and their eyes are vacant. They reek of strong, sickly sweet wine. These zombies are attacking you, and they also happen to be the first 3 victims of Father Bernadette. 2 are Mucilage vineyard workers and are fully clothed, and the 3rd is only wearing underwear, and that's the corpse of Mueller Muggins. Now, the mummy does not know that the PC's coming to town, and this encounter is entirely coincidental. Now, the zombies have been sent by the mummy to cause a diversion so that it can go to the Mucilage household and kill Jason Mucilage without interference. Oh, and because the zombies have been soaking in flammable brandy, fire attacks cause an extra 1 hit point of damage per round, which is pretty cool. You can turn the zombies, but that only returns them to Father Bernadette's hand, and he will use them again later. Mueller Muggin's zombie will do its best to escape. Apparently, it's got enough intelligence to know it needs to get the heck out of here. If the PC defeats the zombies and casts Speak with Dead, this module actually accounts for a high enough level cleric having Speak with Dead. The farm workers will be able to tell you that they are grabbed by a brown man, but they don't know much more than that. Mueller Muggins, he'll be able to tell you that Bernadette has returned, that meddling priest. If asked where Bernadette is, Mueller cryptically replies, where I drowned him in the first place. So this is good. Very early on, a clever PC might get some key details, blow this thing wide open, but still be missing the location of the mummy's lair. So there's still a reason to keep adventuring. So see, the powers can work and give useful information, but they don't have to ruin the adventure. So maybe use that technique in the future when player characters use a spell that might ruin your plot. See if you can be clever about it. Give them their win, but keep the ball rolling. And then Event 3, A Priest in Need. After the encounter with the zombies, the PC should continue to the town. When he reaches the home of Constable Schuster, who he's supposed to check in with, he encounters Father Dominic, and suddenly a haggard priest emerges from one of the homes and rushes towards you. He implores, "Stranger, please help me. Do you have powers to heal? Our constable suffers from an illness that I cannot cure." And this gets back to that situation where I was talking about, where the constable has been infected with the mummy's curse, which slowly turns the blood of their victims into alcohol. That's a problem. Now, Father Dominic's curing spells haven't helped, but the PC may be able to diagnose what's going on and use either cure disease or neutralize poison. Both would do the trick. Schuster, he'll be out of it for a while, but once he comes to, he'll be ready to help. His wife Miranda, not so much. Also here you can meet Mayor Rollins Goodfellow, fretting over the constable, and the cleric may ask Goodfellow to help identify the bodies of the zombies that attacked on the outskirts of town if they weren't destroyed, and the mayor will be glad to appoint several villagers to help him to inform and to console the families of the deceased. Now, Event 4 could happen at any time. It's called the funeral. This is for use after a villager has been slain. The locals will ask the player character to conduct a funeral for the deceased. The townsfolk are upset, and it might comfort them that a high-level cleric of the church is here to hold the service. This is a great opportunity to examine the graveyard and find the hidden office that was covered up when the church burned down and that has the MacGuffin in it that you need to win the game. And as a matter of fact, right after the funeral's concluded, one of the villagers will say, "Hey, look over there! Hilda's grave has been exhumed and her remains are no longer there." Day 7 and Event 5, The Slain Lover. This is where we've got a star-crossed romance between Patricius Medling and Jason Muclich II that are rendezvousing because they got the hots for each other. They're a young couple, both are in their late teens, and they're convinced that the evil in Barlocks is associated with the Muclich winery, and they plan to elope and leave the area forever. However, when they meet, they encounter Father Bernadette out on his nightly prowl. And when he sees the Muclich symbol on Jason's shirt, it rushes over, knocks Patricia aside, and plunges into the river adjacent, dragging him to his watery death. And the next morning, Patricia stumbles into town, dirty and bruised. She collapses in the street, the cleric is summoned, and she's in shock, mumbling nonsensical statements such as, "Why would Father do this? He was always so nice. Jason was a good boy. He wouldn't hurt me." And she has also been infected with the same disease that the sheriff did. And she's incoherent because she's slowly growing more intoxicated as her blood is turning to alcohol. So if the PC can save her, great. She makes a recovery in about 12 hours and then explains her reference to Father was not her own, but to Father Bernadette, who she remembers. So here's another opportunity to learn the identity of the bad guy. An hour after she appears in town, though, a villager discovers Jason Muclich II's body washed up against the support beams of the bridge. So if we've gotten this far, here's your chance to have the funeral. Now, on day 8, event 6, there's a workers' uprising at the Muclich winery after Jason II's corpse is found, and the workers go into revolt, and the player character is asked to help get them to calm down. And there's some role-playing that can be done here. The module gives ideas on what the PC could say, what they could try. It gives some counters that the workers are going to come back with because they're afraid they're next. But it all comes down to the cleric having to force the workers into making a saving throw is to see if they believe what the cleric's laying down or not. If the workers fail the check, they agree to return to work. If they make the save, they jeer the PC and storm away, and by the next day they will all apply to work at other wineries, but only about half will be hired, and the rest will leave town. So, a workers' strike. It's not quite union busting, but it's pretty close. And the night of day 8, we get event 7, Attack Against the Helpless. So after dealing with all that, the PC should feel exhausted. And at night, Father Dominic invites the cleric over to dinner at his home and to join his family in evening prayers. If he does, he gets a nice dinner of fried chicken, green beans, and boiled potatoes, accompanied by a bottle of Teton wine. And after dinner, they go next door to the church, accompanied by Missy Muggins. And as the cleric is leading them all in prayer, as you begin to humbly pray for the divine inspiration and wisdom you need to save the people of Barlocks from their calamity, there's a crash of breaking glass and a heavy thud on the floor. A stained glass window has been shattered, and rising from the floor is a tall, snarling brown man with glowing yellow eyes. Oh, well, you get to meet the mummy now. And you get a surprise roll and a saving throw versus paralysis with fright. Now, Father Dominic, he's going to try uttering an oath and presenting his holy symbol, but the monster just snatches it out of his hand and twists it like an old piece of tin. And then he backhands Father Dominic, who sags to the floor. His wife screams in terror, and Missy Muggins still kneels at the altar, completely out of it. Your heart is pounding as if it's about to burst from your chest. Never have you felt such terror. And then the creature goes to Missy Muggins because he wants to drown her in the holy water. That's pretty boss. And the creature grabs Missy by the back of her neck and drags her to the altar and plunges her face into the silver bowl where the holy water's at, and water splashes out. But the monster suddenly gives a sickening, gurgling bellow, and it lets go of Missy, who slumps to the floor, and still howling, it runs out the door into the night, its hand smoking and dissolving, because apparently mummy hands and holy water don't mix. And then there's a pursuit the player character could go on, and he could be thrown off the mummy's trail if any of the zombies from the previous encounter were left alive. And the Muclich that he's already snatched, Jason the Elder, he'll be a fresh zombie. Day 9 and event 8, the Discovery. This covers the basement of the old church ruins, where the player character can look under the ruined church and find Father Bernadette's old study, which is chock full of danger and cool stuff. I mean, this guy, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, so if the player character didn't find this thing, this is the event in which Father Dominic's wife, Joanne, is out there tilling some soil for her garden and finds a solid oak door. That's a trap door. And when it's opened, it reveals a narrow, sooty stone stairway leading down to a iron-bound wooden door. Oh no, I found a spelling error. Should be an iron-bound wooden door. Okay, so one more editing problem. It's unlocked, but it is trapped. It's a magical trap that the PC could conceivably find and dispel, but they probably won't. If they don't, a fire trap spell is going to go off, inflicting 1d4 plus 6 points of damage to anyone within 5 feet of the door. So it could kill Joanne. Now, once down there, you see a room that remains undamaged by fire, despite its lingering smoky smell. In it is a stout wooden desk with a hooded lantern, quill pen, and inkwell resting on top. A comfortable padded chair is right behind the desk. Next to the desk is a sturdy oaken chest secured with a large padlock. Now, searching through the desk, the PC finds a large book and a key. And the book is a long treatise on undead written by Father Bernadette, cataloging skeletons, zombies, ghouls, ghast, shadows, wights, and wraiths. And a final passage is a short essay on undead brought to life by evil deities and instructions for their destruction. That gives you player handout number 2. And that also gives you the magical ingredients and what to do with them to lay the mummy to rest. Kind of ironic, he wrote the method of his own future destruction. But I'm pretty sure he didn't want to be a mummy. He wrote his own ticket back to heaven. Now that chest, so the key unlocks it, but this thing's also warded with a glyph of warding that does 64 points of fire damage, man, he liked fire, to anyone other than Father Bernadette who opens the chest. Again, it could be detected and dispelled, but dang, this guy could really wreck shop on the Cleric character. And in there you find Father Bernadette's old stash, including a magic mace, some coins, some potions of healing, some pretty awesome spell scrolls. And they were given ideas on what ingredients could be used to fuel the ritual needed to put the mummy to rest. Day 9, Event 9, sees the demise of Old Man Riggins, because after midnight on the third evening, villagers run to find the cleric. And they heard a booming crash and a scream at Old Man Riggins' house. When they looked outside, they saw the brown monster man scurrying away in the shadows. Now, it's midnight. I'm not sure how they saw that, but whatever. And they're afraid to go in Riggins' house, and they want the PC to. If he does, he finds a door smashed in, like with a battering ram, and Riggins is dead in his bed, dressed only in his nightshirt and a cap. His face is frozen in abject terror. Examination of the body reveals brown, damp, whiny, smelling stains on the front of his nightshirt, just above his heart, and one on his wrists. When the mummy entered, Riggins saw him, screamed, and died of a heart attack on the spot. Father Bernadette, well, he wanted to make sure he was dead, so he checked his pulse. That's where the stains came from. He was checking his pulse and listening to his heart. Well, with the guy dead, and the fact that he's only got one leg and would make a poor zombie servant, Father Bernadette left, which is pretty funny. He is an intelligent undead and acts like it. Now, if the PC searches the house, he's going to find a nightstand with a letter that Riggins drafted to Baron Appleby years ago, but he had second thoughts and never sent it, which gives us handout number 3. And it's quite the harrowing tale of that night when he helped Mueller Muggins murder Father Bernadette. And it's realistic in its evil, its terror, and its regret. It's a good read. Now, if a PC uses Speak with Dead on Riggins, he's rewarded with the old man saying, "It was him, Father Bernadette. Come back, just like the old gypsy woman told Reggie." Which, who doesn't want to use the line, "just like the old gypsy woman said"? Further searching the room finds the old man's terrified cat cowering under the bed, old Sasha. And if you try to coax her out, she bolts for the door into the night and is never seen again. It does detail how you can charm it or speak with animals to calm it down before it runs away, but Sasha doesn't know very much and can only describe what a cat would perceive. Now, day 10, event 10. If you make it this far, you got disappearing dogs. This is where you can unlock the Depardieu family because Father Bernadette is messing with their dogs and now they're scared and they want to be good citizens and help because they love their dogs. This is also a last-ditch attempt to point the PC to the brandy cask at the Smedling Winery where the mummy and his minions hide by day, which takes us to Chapter 3, the Smedling Winery. Because at some point, the player character is supposed to come here, find the brandy vat, and get it on like Donkey Kong. We get a description of the place, but the most important part is just that vat. His mummy and any remaining zombies lair here during the day, and they're out by night. And if any brandy is released from the tap, it emits the familiar, cloying, pungent scent that marks the mummy's passage. Detect Evil alerts the PC that there is something very vile about the cask. And hiding in the shadows behind this vat is a skeleton of blackened bones. It's Hilda, waiting to greet her beloved husband mummy when he comes back at the end of a long night terrorizing the village. She's a good wife. If someone tries to destroy the cask or starts to climb a ladder to the top, she attacks, and then you hear the groaning of wood as if something is lifting the vat from the inside. And then it's time to roll initiative. And then the fight can go however it's going to go. But cleverly, this module does address the flammability of the brandy, which, as we covered in the Christmas live stream with Chris Clark and Angelo Shiriako on his DM and Friends live stream, if you're going to put something in great quantities that's very flammable in a module, go ahead and spell out how flammable is it. And boy howdy, this brandy is flammable, causing 10d6 damage to all within 15 feet if it goes off. And anyone that needs to breathe needs to escape this location within 4 rounds of setting off the brandy bomb or die of smoke inhalation. You can also fight and destroy the regular undead. You can temporarily disable Father Bernadette, but what you need to do is take the magic items and say the prayer that we talked about from the handout into the cask, and that can do him in, or you can put it on his disabled remains after a fight. Father Bernadette is still wearing his ring of fire resistance. That dude did like fire, I knew it. So he's invulnerable to normal fire, and so would survive the brandy bomb. Now, if the winery is burned down, he'll find another tomb, starting with the wine cask of its good friend Jorg Teton. And any zombie servants remaining will be left behind to cover his retreat. So we get to chapter 4, wrapping up. With the final destruction of Father Bernadette's mummy, the evil is dispelled, but the Musliches and Smedlings still hate each other. Resentment runs high now that it's very likely that a bunch of their dirty laundry came out and everybody can see it, and the fact that the Musliches ruined their brandy that they've been working on. Their winery might have got burned down, and they're going to want revenge for that too. The other folks who lost friends and family and customers, they're going to be mad at everybody else. So the PC should try to mediate an agreement between the aggrieved parties. And this negotiation is a real role-playing challenge for the DM, who must play the parts of the Musliches, Smedlings, and others. If the PC suggests any reasonable middle ground, the DM should allow it to happen. Because of all the ill will among the villagers, Father Dominic asked the PC to conduct a final church service to give thanks for the destruction of the undead. He recommends a sermon on the evils of unhealthy competition, kind of germane to this. Since the PC played a key role in destroying the monster, everyone in town attends, and the DM should allow the player to roleplay the service as he wishes. At the end of the sermon, the PC gets a charisma check, and if successful, all the winery families agree to bury the hatchet. They even agree to form a cooperative to obtain the best prices for their products. If you succeed by a certain amount, the Smedling that made that prayer that was listened to by the evil god remembers and is overwhelmed with remorse. He approaches the PC privately and confesses his sin and offers to atone by serving the church for 5 years. Now, it gives you a few ideas of what you could do with him, and I think that's a pretty neat development. There's rewards that come with putting the mummy to rest and ending the feud. The Baron makes a gold donation to the church. More of the villagers will start attending service and worshiping the cleric's deity. And as the cleric leaves, the townspeople, even the weird dog folks, are already making plans with the village priest Dominic to expand the sanctuary and the parsonage. You get a fat 6,000 XP story award for defeating the mummy, in addition to whatever you earned along the way. And then we get some ideas about follow-up adventures, including following up on Mueller Muggin's diary like we discussed. The PC may be commissioned to track down who all hired Mueller. Now that god, that evil deity that Buford Smedlings prayed to and caused all this crap, well, he's going to be mad because he animated this brandy mummy, which was creativity to him, but now this powerful tool of his has been destroyed, and he will want revenge on the meddling PC. But that is another adventure for another time. Mwahahahaha. Then we get the stats for Father Bernadette's mummy, including the unusual disease that we touched on. Instead of giving him mummy rot, he gives him alcoholic kidney. I don't know. Then we get the handouts, which are really hard to read in some places, but they're pretty cool. They're worth checking out. And so as I'm wrapping up this review, again, It's a Cleric's challenge with undead as the main villain. But I like the twist here. A brandy mummy. I haven't seen that kind of creativity applied to undead before. So there's touches of humor in this thing, but there's also real personal, sordid, hurtful drama going on too. So it's not just a one-note adventure. And there's not much combat in it. I mean, there's just enough to be interesting. And I find this to be far better balanced than maybe any of the other Challenge series modules, in that one player character without a cast of NPC helpers could conceivably take this on by themselves. It's an investigation that gives you plenty of time, but it's also on a timer. And we have a relatively small number of key NPCs that we need to worry about, making the DM's job easier in portraying each of them well. Each is distinct and given interesting personal touches. And we also get good RP notes for the DM. But overall, the module seemed padded. We got a lot of repeated information, we got those massive margins, and we got that weird choppiness that required the repeating of certain information so we could pad for more space. But overall, I like the adventure. It's good, the writing is good, it's flavorful, it's colorful, it's different. I loved it. Now this is of course available on DriveThruRPG, but remember that Wizards of the Coast puts up a denunciation of all the creators who came before them today. So I would encourage you not to give them your money, because then they're accepting bigot money, and help them keep the moral high ground. So find this thing maybe on an archive somewhere where you can download a PDF version for review. As I mentioned earlier, I couldn't find any video reviews of this thing, but there are a few blog reviews like this one that's pretty long and well considered. Link in the description below. So what did you think of the Cleric's Challenge 2? Have you ever played it? Have you ever ran it? Let me know what your thoughts are. Have you read it? I'd like to hear from you too, get your take. So drop those in the comments below, and if you haven't remembered to like and subscribe, go ahead and do that. And with that, my dear friends, that's all I've got for now. And until next time, I wish you nothing but the best.